Welcome, and today I'm going to, originally I started out looking at this old map and a bunch of these cool old maps, and on this particular exploration I was looking at the Lake Conibus, shown in all the older maps. The largest lake in North America, pre-Salt Lake, pre-Great Lakes. Here we have this Lake Conibus. And what's always caught my attention was not just the lake that ultimately flows into the northern sea, but the rather large city in the center of the lake. Always depicted, and not just a small town, but a rather large one. Here would be a smaller one, and this is a large one. And I made two attempts to try to show this Lake Conibus on a modern map, and at this point I am giving up. But in any case, we always see this Lake Conibus to the northwest, due northwest of what would be present-day Chicago, and on the older maps, what I believe is called Shilaga, as we can see here. Shilaga, Lake Conibus, and after a bunch of research, I determined that it must have been this Lake Winnipeg. And here we can see that Lake Winnipeg is pretty much blurred out in this particular year. Like they don't want us to see the Lake Winnipeg. Really interesting. They might try to tell us this is ice. Very similar to what we see in the northern regions, even the complete covering of Greenland. And let's try another year. Here we go. Now we're allowed to see the lake, but not really allowed to see underneath it. And it just seems like the computer is very upset with me. Even now it's very upset. So let's get out of here. And I've decided to change my video completely. And we'll return to that another time. Perhaps when I am completely offline. But I do believe that that was the location. And I would love to explore the lake a little more and see if we do have an island with perhaps the remnants of a city, as depicted on the old maps. But just to shake the energies a little, I've decided to have a look at some old post offices, some of my favorite buildings. And let's just start here with this post office that takes up 2 full city blocks in New York City, built in 1912. 2 full city blocks. A little look at the inside. Just gorgeous and ridiculous. And here a bankruptcy court in Brooklyn, New York, but this one was formerly a post office. Federal building. And looking very castle-like. Again, a little look at it. And here we are in India. And India having the exact same style architecture. India, of course, having very old architecture. And from resets way back. But we're just looking at the past civilization. with this exploration. And here again in India. And here is the Manila Central Post Office in the Philippines. And just massive, polished columns, and really just boasting the same style wherever we go. And here in Vietnam, Saigon Central Post Office in Ho Chi Minh City. And just a beaut. They've put some modern junk up here. But the same style and the same people, and clearly something before it was a post office. No need to build post offices this way. Again, a little look in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. Really having the same building style as the crystal palaces found all over the world, with the beautiful glass ceilings. Clearly the same builders. And here, this post office was born out of an architectural competition. Of course, everything was architectural competitions back then. Every single building, and for some reason they all managed to have the same style. So, it took worldwide competitions to achieve the same building style. Nobody seemed to be original in the whole entire world. And this is in Australia. Just gorgeous. And again, why hold a competition when you're just going to do the same thing and build in the same style as they did in Vietnam, in the US, in Europe, everywhere. Just almost cookie cutter, as if there was only one style. And here in Algeria, now this having a little different feel, but also boasting the same column style and just the same gloriousness. I mean, the size of these entryways and just massive for a post office. Again, unnecessary. And here a little look again at some of the detail. We can kind of get a better look here. Just beautiful. I mean, using the same style as these builders of prior civilizations, but adding their own flair. And very beautiful and very, very intricate. Clearly seeming cast and not carved, as we would be told by the narrative. In Algeria, Africa. And here, Mexico City. Just absolutely impressive. And clearly not originally a post office. I don't care what the story is. I'm not going to bother reading it. But anybody should know better. And this is glorious. Just amazing. Perhaps a theater in older times. Anything but a post office. And this is the first time I've ever seen this. And I would be curious to know the story, more just for a laugh. But we'll skip that today. And here's the inside. Just mind-blowing, really. This is something else. And really, not as large, seeming to be a smaller scale of what we might see in other parts, but absolutely beautiful. And here in Valencia, Spain, the Central Post Office took about 7 years to complete. And really amazing, this super antiquitech here. I really would love to visit some of these on an individual basis. Just amazing. Again, looking more like some grand theater. And, this is a pretty nice entryway, but this seeming like the main entryway. Just beautiful. Post office. Great place to deliver a piece of mail. And here is the ceiling in here. So this must be up top, and just beautiful. Looking like a stained glass, but I'm not sure. And very interesting picture here, seeming to be depicting some kind of electrical currents. Usually in these older pictures, the wings representing a magnetic field, and this back here seeming kind of like a fasces, but I'm not sure. And some columns. And really, these makers wanted us to know that this was electricity. Even today we use these symbols, or very similar to them, for depicting electricity. In the post office in Spain. And here is one in Sicily, Italy. Just some massive, massive columns. And some amazing antiquitech up here, actually, remaining. Pretty amazing that this would have been left up here. And this one, they're telling us, is adorned with a futuristic look. I suppose compared to a lot of them, this might be seen as futuristic. Perhaps just a little bit more modern, a little more square and less adornment on the columns. But what is similar is the unnecessariness, the overkill, just to receive some parcels and to mail some mail. And here's a little better look at the Valencia, Spain antiquitech that we saw on top. Just mind-blowing. Again, the wings and the magnetic field. And this is just all so much more than what we would be told. And really, we're not told much. And here again, a look at the post office we saw earlier. And just amazing. And even if we have a look across the street here, not sure what they've designated this one as, but totally remarkable. Same civilization was in both places. And let's just have a quick little tour of some post offices. There's just thousands upon thousands from every single corner of this plane. But let's just have a look at a few. This is one of my favorites. A New York City post office. Just absolutely remarkable. And really looking more like a hotel. And I've shown this one in past videos. We can't see so well in this image, but there are curtains in all of the windows. That just seeming very un-post office-like. And one of my favorites is this Chicago Federal Building. Just love this. And the Federal Building had several purposes other than post office. But the building not being sufficient for any of those municipalities, and it had to be torn down. And here is a nice little post office in Kingston, New York. Really beautiful. Small but intricate. A little depiction of the people. I don't know, this almost looking like a car. And let's just have a little look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong demolished much of its past, and there were some really fascinating pictures in here, some nice black and whites that showed the coast looking exactly like this building. I think everything we've been told about China is pretty false when we look at the older black and white photos, and what we see is Greco-Roman style, colonial style, whatever you want to call it. Just here, just to be off topic for a minute, but the Mountain Lodge, demolished in 1946. I mean, so here you go. Here is... In fact, all of these buildings were demolished. Here's another post office. Perhaps this is the same one. Demolished in 1976. I mean, just an absolute wonder, just to keep it for historic sake, but no. And here's that one I was talking about. Just a beauty. This must be the one demolished in 76. And yes, I mean, exactly what we see everywhere, even islands. I was always amazed when we see post offices like this in islands. And where's all the stone coming from? Sandy islands. But nevertheless, Hong Kong. And I featured this one in a past video. This is in Boston, not the best picture, but considering it's been demolished, a fine picture. And here again, the frills, the stupid things we do, like the signage that we add to buildings, and here draping it with some cheap fabric. And this was in Detroit, Michigan. Now again, this was more of a city hall municipality, but it would have served as the post office. And it just goes on and on. And why should any of this matter? What is the role of the post office? One might say, oh, this is a pretty silly designation, which it seems that it is, until we realize the role of the post office. The post office is the hub of this whole system that we're living in. Without the post office, the system fails to function. Without the accountability of the postal system, and even the role of the postmaster, few people are as free as a postmaster. Postmaster can waltz in and out of foreign countries, courtrooms, and has almost a diplomatic role, and somewhat operates outside of the bounds of our system. Very similar to the institutions that create our money out of thin air. And really, the sooner that we come to understand this system and how it really operates, and it really has nothing to do with country to country, this system operates above all nations. And next I wanted to take a little jump in topic and look at this Star of Ishtar. Now somebody just shared this with me and said, this star reminds me of your logo. And I thought, how interesting. It really does. And this logo of mine has been something that I've been drawing my whole life. A little doodle, a little circle, and then these little points. At one time in my life, instead of being so pointy, the stars were squiggly. And later I've kind of refined it. I probably have hundreds of drawings of this sun, sometimes just off in the corner in a little doodle that I make. And I was very excited to see this because, a lot of people asked me the meaning of my logo, and honestly I hadn't really had a meaning for it. I just liked it, something I drew. I use it as the logo for my coffee shop, and now here to find out that it was Ishtar's logo. And it also says that the Star of Ishtar was normally enclosed within a circular disc. And because everything leads to something, this led me back to this Ishtar gate. And it was the 8th gate to the inner city of Babylon, constructed in 575 BC by King Nebuchadnezzar II on the north side of the city. And I just found this absolutely fascinating. And being the end of the video, I don't think I'll get too deep. And very similar to what we see at the temple in Cambodia, where you have a brick and a sculpture protruding outwards. It's brick and a sculpture at the same time. Just amazing and super advanced even for this time period that we're living in today. And really, that doesn't mean anything because everything in the past was more advanced than it is today. And just real quick, I just wanted to share this. And no brick that we could construct today would last a fraction as long as these ruins. And I just can't resist. It could be a lot of factors. But aside from this Lake Winnipeg possibly being the site of Lake Conibus in ancient times, let's just jump back to where we ended our last video and just have another little look at all of this artificialness. These sandbars. And I beg anyone to share some sort of a link or some sort of a story as to who was creating sandbars along the entire coast of the eastern seaboard. Could it be done? Would it be done? And really all of this just lending itself perfectly to something much more ancient and a people who had an ability far beyond our own. And if we just look at this pin that I left the last time, just to recap, everything that is not built on is ancient. And everything that is built on is simply laid on this older footprint, and really varying from year to year in resolution. And how can nobody question any of this? And I think it's because of the system that we live in. The system is created, or some sort of a game that nearly cannot be won, that keeps us scrambling and really leaves us no time to explore anything of interest. The only interest becomes making ends meet. But I think that these lines that we see everywhere, with no exception, are the smoking gun. I don't believe that there is a single story that can be offered. So I do hope to see you soon. Thanks so much for joining me, and have a blessed day. Please like, comment, and subscribe.